Hello everyone, welcome to City Skylines Springwood City Unmodded Gameplay episode 27. Most of our previous videos have been about making our city functional, but this one is going to focus purely on aesthetics. We have looked upon beautifying the city a little bit in some of our previous videos, but in this one we are going to look at decorations. The primary goal with decorations is obviously to make the city look pretty, but it can also help a great deal to make the city look a little bit more realistic. So that's what we are going to aim for this episode, and on the side I'm also going to zone some more homes offline because we are slowing down in terms of game progression. So this is how I'm structuring this video. 3 high-level categories and about 6 or 7 types of decorations that I'm going to show. Starting with the first one, which is decorations for homes. Now for this one, I have a really good area in mind. This one has some good variety. 1 tower, 4 small homes, and 1 large home. I'm going to start with the tower first by fencing 2 sides of it like this. Now before we add a fence to the third side, I want to use that space for something, which is a parking lot. It's obviously not that uncommon for towers to leave some space around themselves. Often this is because of city bylaws, which we don't care about as much right now, but we obviously want to make it more realistic, and this can help us achieve that. Oh, and also the parking lot would add the leisure value of this area, so that's going to be an added advantage as well. Now sadly I cannot add this fence over here, so I'm going to use landscaping instead. This is a good workaround for whenever you cannot use a fence, and it looks good as well. Now I don't like the look of this stretch, so I'm going to use tiles to make it look really pretty. These tiles are good for beautifying most situations. They are not really good for non-rectangular spaces, but otherwise they work really well. I like to add some trees in the space behind like this, and maybe on the side as well. And I think that looks good. I actually like that aesthetic way more than these small bushes, so I'm going to also add a line of trees on this side like this, and I think that looks really good. So we successfully made a public parking lot look like it belongs to this building, which is really good. Obviously nobody's using that, so I wish people would use that, but I think with time that will fix itself. So let's move on to the rest of the area. Now before we do anything else, I want to add a pathway in this area so people have an easier access to the overall network of pathways. Maybe in the future we'll add some more pathways, maybe add a bridge across the highway or something like that. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. Let's deal with the larger house first. With this one, I want to add some fences with bushes and maybe add some trees. There's already a hedge wall on one of the sides, so I'll leave it as is, and I think that makes it a really nice bungalow. Maybe let's remove these because these just look weird, and because it's a large enough bungalow, they maybe have some really nice lights, so we can add some lights like these. These are more public lights, but I think they can work in this particular instance. And I'm going to add some trees now. I think with these lights, some mid-sized trees which are more sparse might look nicer. So something like this bamboo tree can look really nice. So that's a big bungalow that's shrouded in bamboo trees. Now let's move on to these smaller bungalows. Let me do this offline and I'll show you a really interesting difference between decorations versus no decorations. Alright, so I've decorated 2 of these homes with regular hedges with bushes and trees, but then I've also used some tiles and some additional assets like flower pots and play areas and tables and chairs and things like that. But yeah, so these are the decorations for these 2 homes, and if you look at it and compare it with these 2 homes on the right, you can see how much of a difference can these decorations and these little things here and there can make in terms of making your city beautiful and realistic. Anyhow, with these other 2 homes, I'm not going to make it too fancy. I'm just going to maybe add some trees in between them like this to create some separation from each other, and then I'm going to add some bushes and trees and maybe some vegetation behind to create some separation from the pathway. So if you're feeling lazy and you don't really want to be that precise, I think this is a really good way. Trees and bushes and vegetations would always be a really good way to decorate any area. And while we are on the topic of decorations for homes, I want to show you this area that we made many episodes back, and we have done some good amount of landscaping and decorations for these around towers. We obviously need to do that for the rest of this neighborhood, but that's not for this episode. So this brings us to the second type of decoration, which is for commercial. And unlike residential decoration that we just saw, with this one we are going to deal with how the buildings connect with their surroundings in terms of decorations. For this one, I have this area in mind. So the first thing I'm going to do is improve these pathways to make them prettier. I actually don't like that this one is off-centered, so let me just fix that, and that looks much better. The next thing I want to do is integrate this park a little bit better into the area that we are developing. For that, the first thing I'll do is connect this pathway to the one in the park like that. And then maybe add a diagonal connector like that to connect the main road with the street inside. And I'm going to add some small shops here to make that area slightly more busy. Actually, let me remove that for a moment. I just want to make this larger and this one slightly closer to both the crosswalks. Let me clean this up a little bit as well to make it a really nice and clean curve. Looks a little bit better. And with this area, I'm just going to add these trees in a line like this and then sprinkle in some vegetation in all this open area to accentuate that line of trees. This is actually quite different from any landscaping we have done before, and I love the simplicity of this. You know what? Let's actually remove a few more trees. Maybe let's just convert these pathways into regular ones to make it look even simpler. Maybe I'll leave the trees on this side though, because we don't have any trees on the road. Like I said, I just love the simple aesthetic we have here. So I'm going to keep it as is, at least for now. Now, as this pathway goes into the park over here, it gets converted from a regular concrete pathway to a gravel pathway. And I want to reinforce this transition with these trees. Using bamboo trees for this one, just to see how it looks. I will continue that over here as well, maybe in this section of the track as well. And I'll leave it at that for now. Maybe I'll revisit this a little bit later. So the next thing we want to do in terms of decoration is public transit facilities, starting with bus stops. For this, we are going to look at this location with these two bus stops. Now, as you see right now, these bus stops are indicated just with poles, but we are going to make them a little bit more appealing and inviting. So the first thing I'm going to do is to use these pavement tiles once again to demarcate the area that the bus stop occupies. Maybe something like this would be nicer to differentiate it with other pavement tiles we have been using. I can also use one of these pergolas to provide a canopy for our passengers waiting for the bus, which I think is a really nice piece of decoration for a bus stop. Next, I'll add some benches for people to sit on while they wait for the bus. Obviously, it doesn't have any actual mechanical impact on the game, but it just looks nice. Maybe we can also add some lights while we are at this to make the bus stop a little bit more visible and safer. And now I'll use this small bush around the pavement tiles we've added to demarcate the bus stop even more. And I think that's starting to look really nice. Now let's add some trees to make it even nicer and greener. And I think this Chinese windmill palm looks really nice no matter where we put it. Although this one looks nicer when you want to show that the landscaping is more planned, which we are going to do for this one, but let's also do a little bit more organic landscaping for this. So in order to do that, we need to see what kind of trees do we have in the surroundings and take the same kind of trees in our landscaping as well. In this case, we have a lot of these trees over here. I think these are alder. Yes, that's the one. So I'll start adding these trees over here, but I'll try to be as organic as possible. I'll also add a few of those over here, so the transition between this area and that becomes a little bit more smoother. And I'll add a few of those over here as well. And this area already has these trees in these homes. But yeah, with that, let's go back to our bus stop. And I think this is looking nice overall. Maybe this tree is a little bit too close to the bus stop, but otherwise it looks nice. Another thing which I'd like to add is maybe a small shop here, kind of like a cafe which people can visit on their daily commute. And this might take a moment to spawn, so we'll get back to this in a few minutes. So let's look at the other bus stop we have on the other side of this road. And this is one heavily crowded bus stop we have in the game. I almost feel like it might have been much better if the game would have lined them up instead of crowded them in a single spot like that. And I also wish that we could have fixed that by decorations, but we obviously cannot change anything mechanically, so let's focus on the aesthetics. Speaking of which, I want to first see this plaza thing I've made over here. I put this together with a bunch of pathways, most of which, as you see, are not being used by people. So let's get rid of these and even this one, and I'll now add a connection straight to the bus stop, just like this. And with the other side, I'll first upgrade these pathways to match the aesthetic of the other ones, and then continue this pathway to the other side, like this. And look what we have here already. We have an establishment, which as it turns out is a gas station, which we don't really need, so I just remove that and wait for another one to spring up. Sometimes I wish the game would let me choose what kind of establishment I want to build, but in this case we have the medium mug cafe right now, which is fine. Just going to make it into a historical building, so the look of that doesn't change as it levels up, and now we are good to go. So this looks really nice, and overall this is a drastic improvement from what we had before. Anyhow, looking back at this, a lot of people are already using these new pathways, which is really nice. Maybe these trees are a bit too much for this stretch, so I'm going to remove them, and instead I'd rather add trees on this central pathway. This also emphasizes the central pathway a little bit more. Also going to upgrade this pathway to the new one, and this one here doesn't look that nice, so I'm just going to extend this pathway a little bit further to make it look slightly better. Anyhow, let's get back to our second bus stop here, and I think the cobblestone tiles will look really nice in this place. And for this one, I think I'm going to extend the bounds of the bus stop slightly more to make it look like it is more connected with the metro and monorail stations down below. And this is why I'm covering this entire stretch with these cobblestone pavers, which in my opinion looks really nice in this place. So now I'm going to add some fences in this area, and we already have some fences in this one, which I'm going to extend up until our bus stop. And I'm also going to make a curved fence along this pathway, just like this. And now I'm going to add some landscaping elements to this, starting with rocks, mainly along the curvature of the fence, and I think that looks really nice. Now let's add some pergolas once again to our bus stop, and now let's add some trees. For this one, maybe we can use a different kind like this one. Let's see what's this. It's called a silver birch. I really like the look of this one, so I'm going to add this into a straight line along the monorail track as well as the new fence that we created. This is going to be totally deliberate and not at all organic like we did with the other trees, but as long as it looks nice and realistic, I'm good with this. Anyhow, I'm going to finish up this fence that we started over here and then add some rocks in the middle area over here along with some vegetation. Maybe add some bushes as well, and that looks nice. We could also add a small shop like we did with the other bus stop. Maybe over here would be nice. So with this one, I have some new ideas. I removed the local organically spread out trees that we had here. Instead, I'm going to add some new vegetation and some new landscaping to this. I also take inspiration from the Japanese garden behind and add some cherry blossom trees in this area as well. And I think that's about it. That makes this area look really nice. And both of these bus stops are looking much more lively now that we have added so much decoration. Alright, so now that we've taken care of decoration for one type of transit facility, let's look at it for another type of transit facility, which is going to be this cluster of metro and monorail stations. With this one, the first thing I want to do is make some changes in the pathways behind. I'll make this one into a dedicated bike path instead of the other one, and I'll make the other one into a dedicated walkway like this, and then extend this bike path all the way up until this point. Maybe make something like this over here. This makes it easier for the bike path to be connected to the pedestrian tunnels over here. This one did not exist before. I have just only recently added it, but it works really well in connecting these pedestrians to this side of the road. And then the other side of this, where we made this pathway, can provide a good connection to the plaza of the university. And this is something we are going to do a little bit later to make it look more like a plaza. But for now, let's focus on this one. So I'm going to add some of our usual pavement tiles around the metro station to make it look more inviting and more like a public place with a lot of foot traffic. And now let's add a fence behind it that would look just like this. And now let's make a good alignment between the pavement tiles and the fence. And I think that looks really good. Alright, next up, let's add some trees. And like always, I really like this tree, so I'm going to line them up like that. And then maybe let's add some flowering trees in the space in between those trees as well. That looks good. And now let's add some props. I think this fountain looks nice over here. Maybe let's add one here and remove this, and maybe add another one on the other side like this. And let's make this symmetrical by bringing this here. So I removed the fountain from behind because I have a different idea for that. I want to add some kiosks like this one. We can place maybe one of them over here and then one on the other side like this. And let's add some small kiosks in between them like this. This can look like a plaza behind the metro station where people can go grab food from those kiosks, adding more visual and functional value to these facilities. And we have a bus stop here, which I'm going to decorate just like we did before. And I'm going to add some vegetation and trees in this area behind these stations. This will make the pathways around the station a little bit more appealing, especially around this fence. And we can remove these trees just to make that pathway less emphasized. And I think that looks good. Alright, so let's move on to the next type. This is going to be pathways. Now we have done pathways before in various different contexts. For this one, my starting point is going to be a connection between both of these areas. People in these areas have been struggling with easier and quicker access between each other. So we are going to start by making a promenade between these 2 points. This will start getting not only pedestrians but also cyclists and emergency vehicles between these areas, and it's already looking good. That's the best part about these promenades. So with this one, we might not need to do a lot of artificial decoration because it's already in an area area close to nature, so we might add some vegetation and trees, and that should be good. Now we can make a pathway starting from this corner up until this point inside, connecting to our existing pathways inside, and this might help people have an easier access to the main road. I'll also upgrade everything to these concrete pathways instead of the gravel pathways we have right now. I think the gravel pathways are more suitable to maybe make it look like a hiking trail in the woods, and I want to make this look a little bit more connected to the city. And now let's take this pathway a little bit upwards, maybe in this snaky form to make it a little bit more interesting, and then connect it with this promenade. And let's also upgrade these to concrete as well and connect both of these like so. Let's also add this one to make it better connected with the street. And now I'll add some vegetation to this entire area up until this promenade, and also mix and match with different kinds of vegetation so it looks really dense and nice. I've also cleaned up some vegetation that was overlapping these pathways to make it look a little bit more natural. And now we are going to add some more trees as well, the same kind of trees that we have in the surroundings, and maybe even beyond to make it look more organic. That looks nice. Oh, I've broken power lines. Let me just fix that, and that looks good. You know, I can also add a pathway over here because we have the nature park gate over there, so maybe we can provide a better connection between the nature park and this one. I might need to clean that up a little bit, maybe add some new vegetation as well, just like this. And now I'm going to decorate this with some rocks. We don't need any artificial decoration in this area, but rocks can be a really good natural alternative. But yeah, so that was really good. We have done some good level of decoration in this just with natural sources, and this promenade looks really nice. We have a good amount of people using that as well. So I really hope that we don't have any more access and connection issues between these two areas. The next type of decoration we want to do is for roads. Now we have decorated roads in two different ways before. One is either we use a road with trees and then select the kind of trees we want to show, like we have done with this. The second is a more manual method to decorate, like we have done over here, where we have left some space between two different one-way roads and we have manually added a bunch of trees in between. We can also do this on a larger scale with something like an interchange. For example, with this interchange, I've already started doing some decoration, but we can keep doing that for the rest of the interchange. So I'll do the same thing for the other side of this loop. I'll start with some vegetation like you see, and I'm going to keep this as organic as possible. I'll then add some denser vegetation in between as well. And now I'll just add some medium-sized rocks. And let's add some trees now. We can use the same ones we've used before. And now adding some smaller rocks to complete this. Now I'm going to line these trees up parallel to longer stretches of these roads. As you might have noticed, we have done this before as well, and I really like to do this. So at this point, it's pretty much becoming the running theme of the city landscaping. So let's also do the same thing on the other side here, all the way up until this point. I think the only thing to make this realistic is to ensure that the trees are not too close to the highways, because that's usually not very safe. But otherwise, this is perfect. Next, I'm going to upgrade these roads with trees. The idea is to make city entry points really beautiful by having avenues with trees, and this interchange is definitely one of the entry points into our city. And I changed these into sugar maple trees just because I think they look much nicer in this place instead of what we have right now, and I really like how they look over here. I think this is the only place where we don't really have any trees, so I'm just going to add them manually so that they look more balanced. And now I'll add some clusters of bushes as well as some trees to fill out the spaces in between these roads, and I'll be combining both the philosophies that we've been following. So clusters of trees would be more organic, but then we can also have some trees that are more planned and organized. And for some locations, we can even use these small bushes to show that trees are recently planted in this location. We obviously don't have any tree growth mechanic in the game, so this is the best we can do, but I think it can work really well. Actually, let me try something else for that middle area between those two roads. I'm going to add a different kind of tree in this area, and then let me remove these longer trees from in between because I think they look much nicer on the sides. And now let's look at this loop. Maybe we can add some larger rocks in this area, or not. I guess these are too big for this area. So in that case, let's stick with what we did with the other two loops and do some vegetation, some rocks and some trees. And I think that looks pretty good. So we have done quite a lot in this video, and I really hope you enjoyed watching that. I know I enjoyed working on this. There's obviously a lot of creativity that goes into what we can achieve in this game, but with decorations it's even more so. And again, decorations are very subjective, so I might have done something a certain way, but you can go ahead and make it your own way as well. And you are always welcome in the comment section below to talk about how you do certain things, and also if you have any suggestions for me. And lastly, the usual, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you want to see the future of the city, then subscribe to my channel and follow me on Instagram. You can see the handle on the screen and there is a link in the description as well. And with that, I'll end this episode over here and see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.